Still no contract deal between WestJet and its pilots. The union voted in favor of strike action last week, meaning pilots could go on strike May 19th. Joining us to talk more about what passengers need to know is air rights passenger activist Dr. Gabor Lukacs. Thanks for taking the time, Gabor. I really appreciate it. What should passengers be thinking now about doing?
Good morning, Dallas. Passengers are always entitled to a refund if a flight is canceled for whatever reason. And when I'm saying refund, that means in cash to their credit card, not for future travel.
Okay, so yeah, you see a lot of airlines doing that. They give you a voucher for next time, but you can say that that's not the case if you run into that?
The law is settled that if a flight is canceled, the airline must give you a refund in the form of a cash or check or a credit to your credit card, not a travel voucher for future travel.
What about insurance? Should people have some sort of insurance if they buy a ticket, or could they run into some trouble if they don't?
Certainly, if you have a travel insurance which covers you in such occasions, then you should file a claim. But the main expense that passengers are going to face is the cost of accommodation, of meals, while the strike is taking its course, and of course for alternative transportation, buying a ticket on another airline, which may be way more expensive than the amount of refund that you will be receiving.
Now, do you... Yeah, go ahead.
In terms of the situation in Canada, we are in a little bit of a gray zone, because if the cancellation is due to event within the airline's control, then they have to pay for another airline to transport you. They have to pay for your hotel. WestJet, of course, will vehemently argue that the strike is outside of its control. I would say that the strike is fully within WestJet's control, because they control their own staffing, they control their employer-employee relationship, so they have to assume responsibility for it. But in Canada, I would suspect that this would have to go before a judge, before a court, and WestJet otherwise would not necessarily be reimbursing passengers for their expenses for buying a ticket on another airline. The situation is entirely different in Europe, though. If you have a flight on WestJet from Europe to Canada, then you are fully protected under the European law, under a recent decision by the European Court of Justice, which says that strikes are within the airline's control, so the airline cannot claim that the strike is an extraordinary circumstance. They still have to pay you compensation if you are flying from Europe to Canada in the amount of 600 euros, plus meals, accommodation, and reroute you on another flight.
Interesting that a little bit different rules for Canada and the EU. Air Canada has come out saying that it's going to boost its capacity in anticipation of this strike. Should people be taking advantage?
Obviously, if you have to get somewhere on a short notice, and this will be a short notice situation, then do whatever you can. If it is Air Canada, fly Air Canada. If it is a different airline, fly whatever other airline you have. The real question is how much it's going to cost, because you may have bought a ticket 6 months in advance for $500, but now, even with a boosted capacity, you may be forced to pay $1,000 for the same ticket.
Okay. Knowing what you know, Gabor, do you think that the WestJet pilots are going to strike?
I know about passenger rights. I don't have a crystal ball here to predict. Personally, I strongly support pilots if they choose to go on strike. I do personally believe that WestJet has not been treating its employees too nicely lately. They have had shortages, as far as I know, and I believe that any group of employees have the moral right to get a collective agreement that they feel comfortable with. So while it may be inconveniencing passengers, it is on the long run in the interest of the traveling public to ensure that WestJet pilots get the wages that they feel they're entitled to, and they are able to exercise their rights for collective bargaining.
Should passengers be caring about this, paying attention to this? And what about the contracting out of pilots for their swoop airline? Should we be really paying attention?
Passengers should certainly follow the news, because it may affect their travel. From my perspective, the issue of contracting out pilots raises many concerns, and I would not want to fly with an airline that has a bad relationship with its pilots. I would like to fly with an airline where pilots and crew, and I'm including here also flight attendants, are happy, where they are not worried about what they're going to put on the table next month, whether they will have a shelter over their roof or over their head next month. I would like pilots and crew who can focus on the passengers themselves. So in that sense, I would want them to be well paid, and I would like them to have the comfort that they have, the job security that they deserve, and that they are able to focus their full attention to passengers.
Well, we'll see what happens in the days ahead. Dr. Gabor Lukacs, thank you for your time today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you very much for having me.